And
Okay, so welcome everyone. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Susan Pacheco, and I am the Executive Director of the Cambridge Council on Aging. And I am so pleased to be able to co-host this with Kathy Dalton of the Living Well Network. I'll just say a couple of words about the Cambridge Council on Aging. For those of you who may not know the Council on Aging, we are a division of the Department of Human Service Programs of the City of Cambridge. We are, what our mandate or our mission is to make sure that we provide services, resources, recreational services, etc., to older adults in Cambridge, older adults being age 60 and over. So we operate two senior centers. We have one in Central Square, which is the Cambridge Senior Center at 806 Mass Ave. And we have the North Cambridge Senior Center, which is at 2050 Mass Ave. I would welcome you to give us a call, stop by, look at our website, see all the different programming we have. We do many things just as the Living Well Network, have a variety of different fitness and wellness programs, different lectures, other opportunities that you could partake in. And we also have our social services, which is a key piece of the services that the Council on Aging provides, where we have social workers, case managers that are able to help you and help our older adults navigate the myriad of services that are out there, looking for resources, navigating the healthcare system, insurance maze, whatever it may be. So if you have a question about services for anyone over the age of 60, give us a call and we will refer you or assist you in the best way that we can. So without any further ado, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Kathy so she can talk a little bit about Living Well Network.
great. Thank you, Susan. I want to thank Susan and Alicia and the folks from the Council on Aging who've agreed to co-sponsor this with us. This is a great event for us to do together. My organization, the Living Well Network, fosters a strong and connected, engaged, and healthy community of Cambridge residents 55 and up. We support aging in place, lifelong learning, physical, mental, and social well-being. We publish a weekly newsletter of events and information that's useful to folks 55 and up in Cambridge. We run seminars like this one. We host yoga, meditation, and other wellness classes during normal times. We've switched up a little bit just now. We provide technical assistance for computers and other technology one-on-one and in normal times in our drop-in center. We have a book group on aging, as well as many other programs. And I invite folks to get in touch with us if you're not familiar with our organization in the future. We are going to have a talk from Dr. Schneider in just a moment, but as Susan has said, I think Susan just said this, we'd like to ask you to, if you have questions during the course of Dr. Schneider's talk, we want to encourage you to type your questions into the chat, which we'll then take at the end of the talk. If you're not familiar with using the chat button, those of you who are on computers will find it by hovering over the bottom of your screen and clicking on chat, and then you can type into the chat box your question. Those of you who might be on phones or on iPads or tablets can tap your screen, then tap the three dots that you'll see. Use your keyboard or bring up the little fake keyboard, and you'll choose chat and then type your question into the chat there. At the end of Dr. Schneider's presentation, Susan will read those questions out, and then we'll also take questions live at the end. I'm going to introduce Dr. Schneider, and then after that, I'm going to ask anyone who's not muted now to mute themselves. Dr. Schneider, who we're delighted to have you today, Dr. Schneider. Dr. Schneider is a board certified geriatrician who practices at the Cambridge Health Alliance. She's also an instructor at the Harvard Medical School. She graduated from Northwestern University School of Medicine, and she did her residency at the Rush University Medical Center. where she was, oh no, she was a fellow in geriatrics from 2004 to 2006 at Cornell University. Currently, she sees patients who are 65 and up at CHA at the Cambridge Health Alliance. She's also and she divides her time. No, that's later in this. I'm extemporizing and I'm screwing it up. So we'll get there in a minute. She's a recipient of the Kahn Collaboration Award in 2020 from the Somerville Cambridge Elder Services for her work with the Cambridge Health Alliance house call programs, with which she divides her time between that and seeing private patients in her practice at Cambridge Health Alliance. This award is given to honor advocacy and interagency collaboration that benefits older adults in Somerville and Cambridge. Boston Magazine has named her an exceptional woman in medicine for the last 2 years, and I found quite a number of other awards that Dr. Schneider has received as well. So having said that, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Schneider. Thank you so much.
Okay, so Dr. Schneider needs a second.
We're going to all
Yeah.
mute ourselves while you do that.
Okay. So is my screen available to you?
Yes.
Yay. Okay, good. So thank you very much for inviting me to talk, because I'm love to talk about bone health. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. I want to talk to you today about why do we have bones, right? Why do we have bones and why do they matter? So my approach to all of this is I like to give you the reasons that we physicians and providers ask you to do things to take care of your bones. And so I'm going to do a lot of, this is why this happens, and this is why we do this, in order to give you good reason to help you maintain your bones well. So we know that bones provide structural integrity, right, for the body. And without bones, what would we have? We'd be worms, right? So the other thing is that bones are nature's storage depot for the all-important element calcium. Calcium, this is all about calcium. Calcium is a ubiquitous ion throughout the body. It's the most abundant mineral in the body, and we need it for just about every aspect of physical function. We need it for nerve cell transmission. We need it for muscle contraction, for hormone release, for moderating blood circulation, and also for general cellular metabolism. So these are two cartoons that just give us pictures of the things. Basically, calcium ions are involved in just about everything. So Mother Nature cares a lot that we have calcium ions available to us at all times, because without them, a lot of badness happens. So abnormal calcium levels are very, very dangerous. So a normal level would be between 8.5 and 10.5. A very, very low calcium level we would experience with, I mean like 6 or 7, less than 7. We would experience dangerous heart rhythms, right? We call arrhythmias, seizures or convulsions, tetany or very prolonged cramps, right? The muscle just cramps and doesn't give up. And then numbness in the hands and the feet and around the mouth. It's very dangerous. So that's the consequence of very low blood calcium. And very high blood calcium is also not a good thing. You experience more frequent urination, you're thirsty, you're very fatigued, you have pain in your bones everywhere, headaches, nausea, vomiting, constipation. People have a decrease in appetite, they're forgetful, they're confused, they're lethargic. People become very depressed. I'd be depressed too if I had all those other things. And also they experience muscle aches and weakness and cramping, but twitching cramping. So neither of those conditions are things that we would like to experience, right? So Mother Nature takes care of us. And has an extremely elaborate system for maintaining blood calcium levels, the center of which is our bones, right? Bones are nature's calcium reservoirs. The body maintains very tight control over calcium. The calcium is circulating in the at the blood all the time, and we are constantly monitoring how much. Calcium is absorbed from the diet through the intestines, and it moves in and out of the bones depending on how much we need. Are we low? We pull a little out. We have too much, we put it in. The kidneys also participate by, in the short term, if there's too much, it helps you urinate it out. You excrete the calcium in the urine. And if it's too little, the kidneys will hang on to the calcium. So there is this minute-to-minute regulation of calcium levels. And that's done through osteocytes, which means bone cells. The cells in the bone are actively maintaining this all the time. Okay, so there is also an axis of hormones that help us maintain our calcium level. And again, the reason that I am telling you all of this kind of science is that what our understanding of how all this works informs the therapies that we offer you when people have osteoporosis. So we have a little more science to get through. The hormones, parathyroid hormone, activated vitamin D hormone, and calcitonin all interact and help to regulate the level of calcium in the blood. When the blood calcium is low, parathyroid hormone floods the system. It activates osteoclasts, which I'm going to teach you about in a moment, to release calcium from the body. From the bone. That was a typo, from the bone. And the parathyroid hormone also activates vitamin D hormone to increase absorption of the calcium, the dietary calcium from the intestines. So we are flooding the bloodstream with calcium from the bones and calcium from the diet. When the blood calcium is high, a hormone named calcitonin is released, which will slow the osteoclasts in their job of releasing calcium from the bone. So I've given you some terms that you're like, who are these players? So let's talk about the players in a moment. Sorry. Bones are not inert structures. I guess you've understood that from what I've been saying. They're moving, they're changing all the time. Bone remodeling, it's a dual process of putting down the bone or bone formation and taking up the bone, which is called resorption. And the rate of breakdown, if the rate of breakdown equals the rate of buildup, then the bone mineral density, the strength of your bone is maintained. If your rate of breakdown is more than our rate of building up, then obviously the bone density decreases. And so on. So I've been using big words, talking about 3 types of cells. They're all working 24/7. The osteoclasts are the excavators. Osteo means bone, right? It's Greek for bone. So the bone excavators. The osteoblasts are the bone builders. And the osteocytes are involved in maintenance of the bone integrity. Osteocytes, they're the drivers of the whole thing. So if you think about what we've been experiencing here in spring in Boston, right? It seems like they're tearing up every street everywhere, right? And we have the machines that come in and dig holes. And then we have some people come in and they clean up the hole that gets made. And then we have the trucks that come in and lay down the gravel and the concrete or the whatever it's going to be on the street, right? And the asphalt. It's kind of the same thing, right? Osteocytes are the directors of this tearing up and rebuilding. So this is another cartoon, comes from Encyclopedia Britannica, actually, which describes the bone metabolism. So we have a resting state, and you see here that there's an osteocyte. This is where those osteocytes are controlling things, right? And then the osteocyte communicates with an osteoclast, which is the excavator, which has this surface, right? It delivers a very highly acidic substance that helps break down the bone. Then there's some mononuclear cells that clean things up. And then the osteoblasts come and they lay down new bone. So that's formation, and mineralization is when we are packing in a substance called hydroxyapatite, which is calcium phosphate. And then we end up with, on this side, a stronger bone. So this is what we call bone remodeling. Okay. So what happens when bone remodeling goes wrong, right? Or when we're suddenly not having an adequate supply or strength of bone? We develop something called osteoporosis, right? Osteo, again, bone. Porosis actually means passage or passageway. It also is a root for pores. So osteoporosis is defined as a decrease in bone mass. And the result of a decrease in bone mass is that you have a higher risk of fracture. It's a chronic, progressive disease. The bone mass manifests as a deterioration of the microarchitecture of the bone tissue. The bone tissue is in a very special architecture called trabecular bone. When you have a deterioration of this microarchitecture, and I'm going to show you a picture in just a moment, it leads to a bone fragility and also, as a consequence, an increased risk of fractures. The bones of the wrists, the hip, and the lower spine have more, and actually the upper spine too, have more trabecular bone than many other bones. So oftentimes when you hear of people having had fractures, you hear that they've had a fracture of the spinal column, or a fracture of the wrist, or a fracture of the hip, because those particular areas are more susceptible to having a deterioration of that trabecular structure. So here's a picture of a bone. And this sort of fine area here is what we call the trabecular bone. On the right here, you see in this picture, you see on the left side of this picture, you see a nice healthy looking trabecular bone with lots of calcium deposits, right? All of those trabecular, the wings of the trabecular bone, they look nice and strong, right? This activity that I showed you earlier of the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts are all happening on the surfaces of these tiny trabeculi. On the right side of this picture is an example of a poorly mineralized bone. Do you see how fragile that looks? That does not look like a strong bone. That does not look like a strong bone. And so what we want to do is we want to aim to have trabecular bone that is well mineralized. Okay, so we went backwards here. All right. So why does it matter that we worry about osteoporosis. More than 10 million Americans have osteoporosis, and 50% of the women with osteoporosis will have a fracture in their lifetime. That is a lot. 20% of men with osteoporosis will also have a fracture in their lifetime. So why do we worry about fractures? Because there is huge pain and disability as a result of a fracture, and only 40% of people who have had a fracture retain their pre-fracture independence. So only 40% get back to their baseline. There is an increased mortality and increased risk of death for 10%, by 10% within a year of a fracture. 20% of patients with major fractures are placed in nursing homes afterwards. And the healthcare costs back in 2010 were $18 billion in this country and are expected to go up to 25 billion by 2025. So it's a big problem that we worry about. How do we diagnose it? Because most people do not know that they have osteoporosis. They're just kind of going on with their lives until, heaven forbid, they have a fracture. We do screening tests of people over the age of 60 or 65 that are called bone density tests. And many people say, what does that mean, right? It's kind of an X-ray, but what is it? It's a DEXA test. It's a DEXA kind of scanning, which means a dual energy X-ray absorption scanning. And they usually measure it at the lumbar spine, right? The hips and the wrists, which are the three places that we know have the most trabecular bone and are the most likely to be weaker. It's a scanner that produces two X-ray beams, one high energy, one low energy. And the scanner measures the amount of X-rays that pass through. And that reflects how thick the bone is. They take a difference between the two beams, and we are not going into that calculation because I can't do it. And we use that calculation to calculate what we call the bone density. So I think many people are asked to get bone density tests after 65. When you hear about your bone density test, you're often told, oh, your T-score is something. And people say, what does that mean? A bone density of people over 50 is reported in a T-score. And a T-score means it's a comparison between the patient's bone density and the bone density of the average bone density of a healthy young 30-year-old. Because we know that bone density in people's lifetimes peaks at age 30, it's actually at age 28, but around 30, right? So we're comparing as a normal, the bone density of a 30-year-old to the bone density of the patient who is 65 or more. The higher or less negative the score, the better your bone strength. I know that's a little bit hard to get your head around. So greater than -1, as that is reported, a T-score that's reported as greater than -1 is normal. Between -1 and -2.5 is consistent with low bone mass. So it's more negative, right? And then more negative or less than 2.5 is osteoporosis. I'm going to make just a quick stop and make just a quick point here and say that if you're younger than 50 and you have a reason for having a bone density test because you are a severe asthmatic and you've been on prednisone a lot and your bones are at risk for that, the score is reported as a Z-score, which is the same way it's your score relative to a person of your own age, sex, race, height, and weight. So the Z-score compares you to people your own age. And the T-score compares you to what would be optimal. Okay, so most people, when I explain this to them in the clinic, they look at me and say, what? So I'm going to just show a couple of pictures. If we look at this first cartoon here, this graph. So 0, that 0 is the bone density that we attribute to people who are 30 years old, who are healthy, right? So that's a nice healthy bone density. And then the question is, where on this graph does your bone density fall? Is it, someone needs to mute. Is the bone density 1 unit lower than a normal bone density? Or is it more than 2.5 units lower than a bone density? So where on this scale does your bone density fall? Or if it's really good, what if your bone density is higher, right? That would be really normal and would be really good. So another way to look at it is here, a normal bone density is here around +1, 0, which is the peak bone density at -1. And then between 1 and 2.5 is the bone density of osteopenia, which means low bone mass. And then between 2.5 and lower, or more negative, is osteoporosis.
Excuse me, Dr. Schneider, there is someone who is not on mute and it is disruptive to the presentation. So we would welcome you to make sure that you are muted. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think it was me. Okay.
No, it was not you. I just saw.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we talked about the T-score and when you get that T-score, what it means, right? Now I'd like to talk a little bit about risk factors for osteoporosis, some of which we can do nothing about. A family history of osteoporosis, increasing age, right? We are what we are. We are the age we are, that's it. Some hormone insufficiency, right? How much estrogen you have on board. It is what it is, right? Your race, white people or Asian people tend to have more incidence of osteoporosis than other races. We can't do anything about those, but there are things about which we can do something. And that includes the amount of activity that you're doing or being immobilized, low calcium, your dietary intake of calcium and vitamin D, your excessive, if you have excessive alcohol intake or caffeine intake or smoking. So let's talk quickly about why it is that those things matter. Weight-bearing exercise. We know what that means. It means walking, running, stair climbing, dancing, right? Muscles and bones are working against gravity. In resistance training, the muscles pull on the bones, the tendons pull on the bones, and that promotes bone growth and strengthening. So that's why we do weight training. That's why we, you pump your water bottle before you drink it, right? This is predicted by something called Wolff's Law, which shows that a bone responds to the mechanical stress that's put on it with structural adaptation. So the osteocytes react. They know that they sense that tendons are pulling on the bone. They recruit the osteoclasts and osteoblasts to go to that area and build more bone. And that increases the strength of the bone. So that is adapting to the mechanical stress of the bone. So what does that mean in real life? If you're a bowler, and you bowl with your right arm, that arm is going to have a much, and do it a lot, sorry. That arm is going to be much stronger and have a much stronger bone density than the left arm, because that's your non-bowling arm. The same would be true for like a tennis player or for a quarterback, right? If you use it, the bones will get stronger. We ask people to avoid excessive alcohol use, which is more than 4 glasses of alcohol for a man and more than 2 per day for a woman, because alcohol interferes with calcium absorption. It increases cortisol, it increases bone breakdown, it destroys the osteoblasts, which are those builders that we talked about before. And it increases that parathyroid hormone, which causes release of calcium from bone stores. Decreasing caffeine intake. So we ask people to have less than 2.5 cups of coffee or caffeine a day, because caffeine causes a diuresis, right? I mean, you all know that it makes you urinate, right? And we lose calcium in the urine in the presence of caffeine. That's why I tell patients, if you're going to take a calcium supplement, take it at night, because you're not going to be taking a caffeinated drink at night unless you're a night worker. But most of us that sleep at night, right, and aren't taking caffeine at night, taking your calcium supplement, if that's what you choose to do, that is the best time. Smoking cessation. Nicotine, we know that nicotine causes spasms of the arteries, and it reduces blood supply to the bone, which reduces the amounts of calcium that gets to the bone to be able to be put down. It slows the osteoblast, the builder production, and it decreases the body's ability to absorb calcium in order to keep having calcium come in. So calcium and vitamin D are our oral intake of calcium is the way we get calcium into the body in the first place. Optimizing your daily calcium intake with dairy, leafy green vegetables, fortified cereals. Your goal is 1,200 to 1,300 milligrams of calcium a day, which is about 3 to 4 servings. It's hard to get. It's hard to do. But if you can do it, that's fantastic. Vitamin D, you can get through sunshine versus supplements, because vitamin D is the sunshine vitamin and hormone. And vitamin D, one of its main jobs is to optimize calcium absorption from the diet. You can get your vitamin D with 20 minutes of sunshine exposure 3 days a week, only in the summer and the spring, at least up here, unless you go to Florida. In the diet, you can get vitamin D in cod liver oil, fatty fish like salmon, sardines, anchovies, whale blubber. Not a lot of people have that on their diet, but the indigenous people of Alaska actually don't have vitamin D deficiency, despite the fact that they almost never see the sun, because they eat a diet of whale meat and whale blubber. So, and then you can take supplements of 800 to 2,000 units daily, depending on what you need. So I'd like now to talk about pharmacologic therapy and how these things work. If you have a diagnosis of osteoporosis, you may be offered a therapy called the bisphosphonate, which inhibits bone resorption by attaching to that bone mineral surface that the osteoclasts with their ruffled borders, those little ruffled borders that we saw. I'm going to skip ahead and show you. Remember these ruffled borders here? This is what is excreting that acidic mixture that breaks down the bone, but the cell has to hang on to do it. So bisphosphonates stop that and stop the osteoclast's ability to create those scooped out regions. You take it once a week or once a month, depending on the formulation. It's a complicated administration. Many of you know that you have to take it on an empty stomach with a large glass of water. You have to wait 30 minutes before you eat. You can't lie down. It's kind of a nuisance, but people do it. And you usually will be treated for 5 years, and then you stop and have a drug holiday. The major adverse side effect can be ulcers or gastritis, because it's a pretty abrasive medication to take, and it's tough on the esophagus. There is also a very rare but devastating complication called osteonecrosis of the jaw, which we'll talk about in a moment. That was just going back to that cartoon. Calcitonin is an older formulation, which is a nasal spray that inhibits the activity of osteoclasts, but it's only been shown to prevent spinal fractures. It doesn't really help with hip fractures and wrist fractures. So it's not used that much, but it was used in the past more. Raloxifene is an estrogen receptor modulator, which actually stimulates estrogenic effects on the bone, which we know that estrogen levels protect bone strength by decreasing the survival of the osteoclast. It blocks the resorption. So those excavators aren't around as much. You do have side effects with hot flashes, and it's not used that much anymore because of other complications from that therapy. The next more recent therapy is something called denosumab or Prolia, which is a human monoclonal antibody. And in this cartoon here, you see this is the osteocyte down here, and this rank ligand, this is what that monoclonal antibody binds that signaling, and it stops the osteocyte from telling the osteoclast to do its work to resorb bone. It's an injection that you take every 6 months. And it matters that you get it right every 6 months. If you wait 7 or 8 months, actually, it doesn't last that long in the body. So you do have to stick to that, the every 6 month schedule. The important thing about both the denosumab and the alendronate is that it is incredibly important that you make sure that you are taking adequate calcium and adequate vitamin D, because you are undoing Mother Nature's backup plan just in case you have too little calcium in your system. So it is very, very important. We talked briefly about osteonecrosis of the jaw, which is this pretty debilitating infection and cell death of the bones in the jaw of the mouth. It's usually associated with oral surgery or deep dental work. So, and it's been shown very rarely, like 1 in 10,000, to happen most often with infusions of bisphosphonate therapy like Reclast. And also with the monoclonal antibody, it's been shown that Prolia can also cause this. So it is important not to be having implants done or teeth extracted when you are on these medicines, because that could be a pretty devastating complication. The final therapy that I want to talk about is teriparatide, which is actually, it's a formulation of parathyroid hormone. Now, we just talked about how parathyroid hormone actually causes the bones causes resorption from the bones and causes lots of calcium to come from the bones. If you pulse it, if you don't flood the body with parathyroid hormone, but you pulse the parathyroid hormone and just give 2 microgram injection once a day, you goose the osteoclasts to do a little bit of digging, and they signal the osteoblasts, the builders, to put down bone for the rest of the day. But then the osteoclasts stop their work because there is no additional, you've just goosed it. You've just given them a pulse of the parathyroid. So then the rest of the day, the osteoblasts are putting down new bone. And this results in what we call an anabolic reaction. So the bones actually get bigger. They increase by 13% over 2 years, the bone mass. It's a way to reset your bone mass. It's given, right, I told you, subcutaneously once a day, and it's usually very well tolerated. We can give it for 2 years, and then we can't repeat it. So it's a way we figured out to reset the clock. We're resetting the bone health clock, right? We can't go back to being 30 years old anymore, but we can take 2 years of these injections to reset the clock and rebuild some of our bone density. And then you can go back to other therapies that maintain the bone density again. So that was an awful lot of information. What I'm hoping you will take away from this is that bones are hugely important for the structural integrity of the body and as a calcium reservoir. The cells of the bones are constantly breaking down and building up the bone. We can alter some of our risks of poor bone health by quitting smoking, moderate our alcohol intake, physical therapy, and getting adequate nutrition. These are things we can do to make it better. And there are good pharmacologic therapies that are available, but it's very important that if we are going to undo what Mother Nature set up to maintain our calcium levels all the time, we have to take adequate calcium and vitamin D. I made it. So now I think I can open up to questions.
So if you could stop sharing your screen, and I will first entertain the questions that have been written in the chat, and then we can ask for live questions. So
Okay.
One of the first things is, would you consider sharing the slide information, your PowerPoint? It looks like people would like to receive it and be able to actually read what you presented.
Oh, was it too fast? I'm
No,
sorry.
no, it's like, I think people just always like a takeaway.
I have no problem with that. So I tried to, the cartoons and things that I took from the internet, I tried to give, attribution of where they
Yes.
came. So I
Great.
tried to be careful about that, but I just want you to know that's it.
If you could email them to me, and then Kathy and I can then email it to our attendees, to our registrants, that would be so appreciated. Thank you.
Sure.
So the first question that was in the chat, it says, please tell about Reclass's bad side effect. I believe you mentioned a few different side effects.
So Reclassed is the infusion formulation of a bisphosphonate, right? So it's not the pill that you have to take and you have to sit around and wait and all that. But it's the same medicine and it works the same way. I would say that, so the osteonecrosis of the jaw happens 1 in 10,000. It is not a common, this is not common. It does happen, right? But it is not common. The problem with Reclassed can be if people are not very careful about making sure they take their calcium and their vitamin D. It's just really important. Okay? Really, 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 really important, because the bad things that happen are because we are undermining Mother Nature's way of keeping the calcium level stable in the body. So I would say that is the side effect.
That makes sense.
There are 3 other questions, Susan,
Yes.
about the reclass in the chat. One of them is from you. Do you see those? They're right around yours.
Okay, so I'm going to just take them in order here. So there was also a question, because you mentioned caffeinated beverages, but someone is asking, is decaf coffee and tea all right?
Well, so it's the caffeine that is the diuretic, not the tea and the coffee. It's the caffeine, right? So if you're drinking caffeinated Coke, you're drinking caffeinated Mountain Dew, whatever, right? It's the caffeine that causes you to urinate out your calcium.
Yep, that sounds very. So the next one is, my endocrinologist told me not to take calcium since it increases the likelihood of getting kidney stones. Better to get calcium from food.
Oh, I'm totally with that, but get it right. Get the calcium from the food.
Yes.
I'm not telling you that you should go out and eat 9 million tablets of calcium tablets. No, 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 no. But I'm saying make sure that you pay attention to your diet to get that calcium from your food. It's super important. And I'm sure the endocrinologist would agree with me. I'm sure of it.
And then I actually had posed this question in the chat. Also, you mentioned towards the end of your presentation, the different treatments, and then to make sure you were off the treatments prior to any tooth extraction or implant. What do you consider, how much time does one need to be off the medication before getting a tooth extracted if need be?
So before we give an IV reclast and before we give therapy, before we give the Prolia, we have the person's dentist say, no, I don't anticipate doing any oral surgery on this person.
Okay.
Right. This person has good dental health, that we are not pulling out all their teeth, or we are not, right. So that's before we even give this medicine, because once it's there, it's there. It's not going anywhere, right? It is staying in the body for, the Prolia is there for 6 months.
So you better hope that you don't have a tooth infection, right?
Well, right. I mean, good taking care of your dental health is important, right? We all want to, right? If you have a tooth infection, of course you treat it. Of course you do. It is not a guarantee that if you have to have some kind of dental work that you're going to have this. It's just that we see it more if people have dental work.
But the next question that someone posed, I don't think it would be applicable if someone already has a dental implant, correct? If they
No, yes. Right.
Just wanted to make sure. Oh, I am on recast and just had a tooth extraction and I'm having an implant soon. Second implant, no problems. Endocrinologist at MGH said it was okay. Maybe I am lucky.
No, well, so again, remember, we're talking 1 in 10,000.
Oh,
we're not
good to remember. Yes.
Right. So if the endocrinologist felt that this was an okay thing to do, truly, they think about this more than I do. Right. I think about it a lot, but they think about it a whole lot.
Yes.
So I would, of course, defer to my specialist colleagues.
Right. I have osteopenia and would like to know what you think of calcium supplements geared toward rebuilding bone strength. What should those supplements contain?
Calcium supplement. So I'm going to tell you that it is, given all this physiology that I just described to you, it is unlikely. I mean, if you have more calcium available, then the bone's reaction will be to put the calcium down, right? So if you have enough vitamin D and calcium, then in theory, that is increasing bone strength. But the way to really increase bone strength is to do, on top of your calcium and your vitamin D, and I don't know, some people like magnesium, whatever, fine, is do that weight-bearing exercise, right? Take your water bottle and do this, right? I mean, do your walking, right? Help the bones as much as you can. Does that help?
Yes, and this is perfect for the next question of what you're saying is how much exercise weight bearing is needed for supporting bones? Like, what do you recommend as time per day or how often?
So I think, I'm going to tell you I'm winging this one because I didn't look at what the recent recommendations are. I think, they want you to do 150 minutes of some kind of weight exercise a week, and that's for cardiovascular, and 3 times a week doing some kind of, it's like 5 minutes. If you're doing a 2 minutes, a 2-pound weight, right? You're actually doing resistance training. It's about 5 minutes. It's not that much.
So the next one, regarding raloxifene, is it possible to stimulate estrogen if effects on the bone with estrogen in foods such as soy and wheatgrass juice?
That is a really good question.
Thank you, Janice, for that very good question.
That is so, and I'm going to tell you, I don't know the answer to this. I'm not going to lie. I don't know, but you're right. You're right. Soy is it is an estrogen. I don't know the answer. I'm so sorry.
No, that's
It's a great question. I didn't think to look that one up. I don't know, but it's a great question. So now I will.
all right. This has, and if you find the answer, you can send it to us and then we can share it.
Yeah.
This is a comment. This has been so helpful. I was advised years ago to take other nutrients besides D and calcium, including strontium citrate.
Yeah.
Thoughts is what it says.
So strong there. So the thought was, if you could trick the bone into putting down strontium instead of calcium, that would strengthen the bones. I am not sure. Certainly people aren't doing this now, right? It's just it's a substitution kind of thing. And my thought is that evolution and Mother Nature have been thinking about this much longer than we have. And if strontium needed to be part of the body, evolution and Mother Nature would have put it in there.
Would have put it in there. I like that answer.
I'm going to just tell you that is my thought, but that's my gestalt. That's not.
Okay.
There
Very
it is.
good. I like that. Next one. I was told that D3 is the kind of D most available to the body. Thoughts? And can vegans get enough calcium in diet?
Sure. Oh, vegans. Oh. Vegans who do not take dairy. Are they willing to take calcium fortified foods? Right? I mean, rather than dairy, I mean, it should be possible if you do that. But going back to the vitamin D3 thing, yes. Vitamin D3 is the form of vitamin D that we as mammals make in our skin. Unlike the D2 formulation, which is what plants make.
Okay.
There it is, which is also available to us, but less available than D3.
Okay, very good. And how long would you take Prolia?
So Prolia is it's not an old drug. So I think we're learning as we use it. My understanding from the endocrinologists is that you can keep taking it. You don't have to, you don't have to stop. That said, it seems to me, if you think about what this is doing, do we really want to block nonstop this remodeling procedure that Mother Nature set up? Because bones, I mean, you need to, just like you have to redo streets. There, at some point, you have to be able to scritch them up and put new asphalt down.
That's right. That's right.
So, we've discovered that with bisphosphonates, if you do it bisphosphonates for 10 years or so, you can get into a lot of trouble for having just kind of irregularly, the trabecular just not appropriately organized anymore.
Okay.
And it can cause these kind of catastrophic fractures.
So there is,
I'm
sorry. There is one last comment and a question, and then we'll open it up. So there's first a thank you. And then there is a naturopath told me that most calcium supplements aren't available to the body, but ionic calcium is. Thoughts?
Ionic calcium. So ionic calcium is ionic calcium is calcium plus it's a molecule that you're going to have it attached to something. Right? It's going to be calcium carbonate. You can't just eat an ion.
This is not very appetizing.
So The availability of calcium in the body depends on being able to break it down in the GI tract and having enough vitamin D to escort it across the intestinal lining into the body.
Okay.
That's what we understand about the physiology. I'm not sure what you mean. Can't imagine how you would take ionic calcium. I think that's, I'm not sure what that means.
Let me, that was from Janice. Maybe Janice can unmute herself and ask.
I mean, I'm happy to be taught,
Yeah.
right? That would be great. Teach
And-
me.
Oh, hi, thanks. I mean, the brand name is Eidon, E-I-D-O-N, and it's in a liquid.
Uh-huh.
And it's, I mean, it said on the label ionic calcium. So perhaps it is bonded to something else. I don't know. And now, you know, I used up the first bottle. Now I am on, about to start concentrate. See what it says. It just says other ingredients, deionized water. Okay, calcium as calcium chloride.
Aha. So that
Okay.
is not ionized calcium.
Okay, that's
That is calcium.
This
and-
is calcium liquid concentrate. This isn't the original thing that I got from them.
Okay.
And I don't have that original bottle, I don't think.
My advice would be truly,
Please.
because
Mhm.
the way to know, I mean, it's great that you're taking calcium. I don't care how you take it. It's great, right? Get it in your food, get it somehow,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I want my body to be able to use what I take in.
Exactly. Exactly. So don't take it and take caffeine at the same time because you're going to pee it right out. There it is. Right?
Right.
So I would say go somewhere to have blood tests to check your calcium level, check your parathyroid level, and check your vitamin D level, and make sure that those are all normal. If they're all normal, then you're getting enough, and that's a good thing. If you're not getting enough, your parathyroid hormone is going to be high. Right? That will be a signal that you don't have enough.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Okay, well, Dr. Schneider, I see that it is 2:02 and I want to be respectful of time. I also noticed that Kathy completely disappeared off the call. So I'm not quite sure what happened to her. She disappeared into the Zoom world. But are there any one last pressing question that you need to ask that wasn't addressed or you need clarification? Please unmute and you could ask that question before we thank Dr. Schneider for her time. Okay.
I would just like to thank you so much. What I am most upset about is the health system in the United States that's not proactive, and why when one develops osteopenia, one isn't sat down and given this information in a very, very constructive way, which I wasn't. And I'm in part of a good health system. So thank you so much. It's a lot to absorb in one session.
Sorry, it was a lot of
I had
information.
a question. I don't know if I'm muted or not.
You are unmuted.
Okay, because I think I still. So I had osteoporosis of the left spine, and I took Alendronate. I think it's for 4 years. I'm not sure. And they said not to do any implants, dental work before that. So I've probably been on it. I'll tell you the truth, I haven't kept track, probably 2 years. And I have had an implant and a tooth pulled. So I'm wondering, because I'm not sure if this is the same type of question referring to that or not.
So if you're taking an oral alendronate, or you're taking oral alendronate, right?
Right, half
Much-
hour in the morning, yeah.
Right, that's
Half
great.
hour before you, and there are times I forgot. And they said to one person told me to skip it one time. Another one said, wait, that's another question, to wait 2 to 4 hours, depending what I ate. So I'm confused on that too, because sometimes I had an emergency and I completely forgot, until I thought of it later.
It's okay. So we define an empty stomach is 4 hours after you've eaten. Okay, that's first of all, right? That's the empty stomach. It's 4 hours after
That's
you've
good
eaten.
to know.
Any time of day, right? The incidence of this osteonecrosis of the jaw happening in someone who's taking oral bisphosphonates is much, much less than the intravenous bisphosphonate. Okay, so the people that take reclast are at much higher risk. So that it's almost not a risk for someone who's taking the oral, but we try and be as careful as possible.
Okay, that's where I lost what I refer. So what if you forget to take it? Because one of them told me to skip it, but start again on Sunday. So no one really had an answer, to be honest, or they're different answers.
I would say if you forget to take it the next day. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. It's not. It turns out that the bisphosphonate settles in the bone and it's there for a really long time. So it's okay. It's better. It's better to take it once a week. That's the optimum. If you forget it and take it the next day, oh well. Okay.
Yeah, I forgot I had an emergency. I had to go visit my husband, whatever. And I completely forgot, half asleep early in the morning. You know what I mean? So if I forget and I take it on a Sunday and I take it Monday, start again on Sunday.
Sure, whatever. It's fine. It's
Okay,
not
perfect.
that exact a science. You're okay.
And if I skipped it, I skipped it one time because he told me to skip it. And I thought, let me call them again. And I took it like a week.
It's okay. It's okay. Really.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know, I'm so concerned, because you don't want to be worse.
No, you don't. But you know what the most important thing is? I know I said this about 1,000,000 times. Make sure you're taking your calcium and your vitamin D.
I'm not taking calcium though. I'm just taking vitamin D.
Are you fine? Are you taking calcium in your diet?
I'm trying to try to eat more calcium things. Like I took, I saw there was cottage cheese at Trader Joe's that had, it didn't have high salt, and stuff. So, and zero fat, that's what it was. It was a zero fat. So I took that, I would take that, sometimes, and I don't know, try to have a pineapple or something.
What you want to do is optimize. It's what's most important is just optimize your calcium intake. Whether you want to take tablets, the way to find out if you're taking enough calcium is to get your blood drawn and check
Yeah, I had it, right.
your
So-
PTA.
Yeah, okay.
So
How
thank-
do we find the nutrition information for it? I don't know if you can send that to us with the other stuff, because I know you said stick with the nutrition. Where do we find information for that?
Well, that might be another presentation, a future presentation. More nutrition based.
Mhm.
But I just want to be respectful of Dr. Schneider's time. It is a little
Thank
after
you so
2
much.
o'clock, and I
Welcome.
want to turn it over to Kathy right now to close us out.
Okay, Kathy, can you just tell Janice that teriparatide is self-administered?
I
saw
think she
Thank
probably
you.
heard you. Okay. I want to thank everybody for attending. We will be posting, the Council on Aging will post the video, and we'll also post it on our website with the link to our YouTube channel, I think, if we can swing that. So the information will be available later if you want to. It was very information dense, so you'll have a chance to watch it again or share with your friends. Dr. Schneider, I so appreciate that great explanation of what's going on and how to deal with it. And thank all of you for sitting through this with us, and I hope it was useful to everyone. So thank you again, and have a great afternoon. Get some exercise, eat some
That's
leafy
right.
greens.
It
Thank
was
you
very,
so
very
much.
useful. Thank you, Dr. Schneider, very much.
You're welcome. It's
Thank you to
great.
the
Stay on
Council on
for a
Aging.
minute.
Thank you very much.
Kathy, if you could stay on a minute.
I
that would
can
be great.
stay, but
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to take off. Thank you
And
so
I'm
much.
Thank you,
stopping
Dr. Schneider.
recording
Yeah.
now.